Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special holiday edition of Nuclear Heat right here on WrestlingInc.com. I also want to tell you about the show that we do on Monday nights immediately following Raw, where we give a Raw review right here on WrestlingInc.com, and a very fair Raw review, very honest Raw review. If it's good, we'll put it over. If it's not, we'll bury it. But I think that's also a very entertaining show here on Monday nights. Also, a couple of times a month, I'll do some guest interviews, right here on WrestlingInc.com. And for those that do follow me, you can also go to VinceRussoBrand.com. You could follow me all week long, where I do podcasting. I'm currently running a special on that network right now that you could become a member of the brand till the end of the year for less than $1 a week. Okay, there's a lot I want to talk about today. Obviously, a lot of it surrounds the ratings of Raw this past week. And, if you're a wrestling fan, it was the lowest rated Raw in about the last 20 years. The last 2 hours of the show had under 3 million viewers, and I think the final rating was like a 2.13. And let me make one thing perfectly clear. Even though I used to work at the WWE, and obviously I worked there at its most successful time during the Attitude Era, I don't gloat when these numbers come in and they're horrifically low. It doesn't put a smile on my face. It doesn't give me any satisfaction. Quite frankly, I take it to heart that the ratings are so currently low as it pertains to wrestling right now. As the ratings go down, that affects all of us that are associated with the wrestling business, including me. So it would be totally counterproductive on my end to gloat and be happy about low ratings. I'm not. I'm sad about low ratings, and that's why, I extended the olive branch. I offered to help. I've emailed Vince McMahon a couple of times, to just, kind of help them get out of this slump. Maybe they need new, fresh eyes. Maybe they need, somebody that had some success there before. Whatever the case, I did my part to try to help, because quite frankly, it is difficult for me to sit by week after week after week and see what's going on in the wrestling business. And of course, that affects us here at WrestlingInc.com. And it also affects me at VinceRussoTheBrand.com. Mick Foley this week was really one of the first wrestlers to come public and basically say, he's a show or two away from watching Raw. And this is coming from Mick Foley, a WWE Hall of Fame, a highly, highly intelligent, highly respected, but he publicly came out on his own website this week and, just talked about the current state of Raw and the WWE. And there are a couple of things that I want to point out to you today that I think need to be looked at immediately. And there are two topics that very rarely get spoken about, and I want to speak about them here. Listen, obviously, if you follow me, I'm a creative guy. I'm a character guy. I'm a storyline guy. That I believe wholeheartedly that the wrestling business is not going to exist on wrestling alone. We've seen wall-to-wall wrestling in the last month. Very few vignettes, very few characters being built or stories being told. And obviously, we're at a 20-year low, so I'll let that number do the talking. But there are a couple of things aside from characters, aside from storylines, aside from the entertainment factor that you need to look at first, that need to be adjusted first before you can even get into the nuts and bolts of how we need to totally turn this show upside down, get it back on track of where it needs to be. The first one is the structuring of the show. The way that this show is put together. And as a writer, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. When we were writing the Attitude Era, and this was a 2-hour show, that 2-hour show would approximately be 11 segments. And what we tried to do back at that time was, we knew back in 1998 that people had very short attention spans. And it was at that time that more and more shows and more networks were appearing on television. There were more selections for people to choose from as to what they wanted to watch. So, we knew that the guy at home was sitting at home, with his remote control in his hand, begging you to change the channel because there's such a short extension span. 15 years later, it's 10 times shorter than it was back in 1998, and there are many more choices for the viewer to choose from. So what we used to do is we used to break down the show into 11 or 12 segments, and every segment was a standalone story, with different characters, a different story, a different match. Very rarely did we go through a commercial break with a match. If we ever did it, it would be in the main event, but very rarely did a match carry over a commercial. Again, we didn't do that because we knew the attention span of the viewer. So there would be standalone stories in each and every segment that enabled us to keep people's attention. It was always something new, something new, something new. It also enabled us to get more people over, get more people on the show. In other words, rather than have a 3-segment wrestling match, where we're seeing 2 or 4 wrestlers, use those same 3 segments to do 3 completely different stories. Now you're getting over, maybe 6 to 10 to 12 wrestlers in the same amount of time. But the idea was, that's where Crash TV came in. The idea was to move it, always giving the viewer something new, a new look. If you didn't like that, maybe you'll like this. If you don't like this, maybe you'll go to this. Whereas now, if it's a 3-segment match and I'm not interested, I'll tune off and I'll come back 10 minutes later when the match is over. So that was one of the things we did because of the attention span of the viewer. We also had a thread throughout the show. And what I mean by thread was, we had a beginning, a middle, and we ended the story with an end. And we interwove storyline between those 3 acts with backstage vignettes throughout the entire show. So this was called, the body of the show, the backbone of the show. Austin and McMahon would come out in segment 1, set the story. Something would happen right smack in the middle of the show at 10 o'clock. And then we would finish it off, end the story, at 11 o'clock. So there was a string or a backbone throughout the entire show, one specific story that we were telling from beginning of the show to the end. So you kept people involved. How many times in this day and age are Taker and Kane there? They're in the first segment, then they're gone. How many times is Lesnar there? He's in the first segment and he's gone. Why not have him in the first segment, tell a story, tease it throughout the entire night, and pay it off at the end? If you're going to put Lesnar up front and then the people know that he's going, well, I might as well turn it off now. We're not going to see Brock Lesnar again. There are just so many simple 101 television writing tricks. And that's the problem. What I'm talking about here is television writing. What they're doing right now is they're writing wrestling. They're booking wrestling. Huge difference between writing television and booking wrestling. I had the privilege of working with Ed Ferrara. Ed had worked on several television shows before he came to the WWE, you know, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Weird Science, to name a few. He knew how to format a television show, and that's what Raw is. Raw is a television show. In 2015, Vince McMahon is booking a wrestling show. That's why only wrestling fans are watching and nobody else. A couple of other tricks that I could tell you that they're not doing at all, that every single television show from the beginning of time did this. When you go into a commercial, you have to have a hook. Something has to happen to entice the people to come back. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the remote control again. If you go to a commercial and you flip to see something else, and all of a sudden that something else has your interest, well, then you're never going to go back to Raw. So you have to make sure at the end of every segment there is a hook. There's a reason to come back. And then when you come back on the other side, you got to have something big, something, you know, exciting, impactful, has to happen right away to keep the people there. These, again, are all elements of basic television writing. Look at any hot show that's on right now. Any of them. I mean, some of my favorites now are Blind Spot, Fargo, Scream Queens. They all do the same thing. Every break goes in a commercial with a cliffhanger, with a hook. And here's the most important thing. At the end of the show, give us a reason to watch next week. Either promote something that's happening next week or have something happen in the last angle that's going to carry over to next week. Don't have a period at the end of the show. You know, you have to write it like it's a serial, and you got to hook the people in next week with this week's show. So, you know, give them a plug of what's to come next week. Give them a storyline. End hot. Don't end with a period, end of sentence, show over. So, you know, first and foremost, the structuring of the show alone can immediately add viewers to the show and get that rating up before we even talk about, you know, creative characters, angles, the very formatting of the show. Write it like it's a television show. You're on television, not like it's a wrestling show. Number one. Number two, very important, and I want to set this up correctly. I was watching a show from the Attitude Era yesterday, and I'm going to tell you which one because you can go back and watch it. It was March 30th. 1998. The reason why I watch it is because every Tuesday on the brand, we do a show. It's called Raw, What It Was Good For. And we go back and we look at a show from the Attitude Era that I wrote, and we break it down almost like a director's cut. So I explained to you why we did the things that we did so you could see it firsthand, and you could clearly see what worked back then and what's not working today. Again, that's every Tuesday on VinceRussoBrand.com. Check it out. So I did my show yesterday with my partner, Jeff Lane. Let me give you some of the highlights of the show. This is the first show that Stone Cold Steve Austin is champion after WrestleMania 14. He has a confrontation with Vince McMahon. He uses some, foul language. He gets arrested. From there, there's a turn on Farouk by The Rock. From there, X-Pac joins DX and really uses some choice language. From there, there's a cage match with some, a lot of violence between the New Age Outlaws and Chainsaw Charlie, Terry Funk, and Mick Foley. So we saw a little bit of violence there. We saw Sable, whose dress down the back literally was so low cut that I think I saw butt crack. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I got a glimpse of butt crack, but very, very sexy, revealing attire on Sable. So there was a little bit of everything for everybody. And like I said, the language was a little harsh. There were scenes of violence. There was some, sexuality. There was a little bit of everything, and rightfully so, in a television show that's on from 9 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock at night. And that's not a time when kids are up watching television. This is a time period, whether it's 9 to 11 or 8 to 11, where adults are watching adult shows. Like I said, like a Blind Side, like a Walking Dead, like a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Shows like this with adult content. It's the time slot. So I finished watching all this show. And my buddy Jeff Lane says to me, he goes, Vince, do you know what that show was rated? And I said, what? He says it was rated TVPG. The same exact rating that Raw has today. The same exact rating that people are blaming the low ratings on. They're basically a lot of excuse I hear a lot is it can't be cutting edge, it can't be dangerous, it can't be outside of the box because it's TVPG. This show was TVPG, the same exact rating, and we saw language, and we saw violence, and we saw sexuality on a show that was rated TVPG. Everything that we did on this show, you are allowed to do today on a TVPG show. Here's the problem. The WWE is nowhere near the TVPG line. What the WWE is rated is PC, politically correct. That's what they're rated. Their limitations have nothing to do with the TVPG rating, and nobody has publicly stated that. So I am going to read to you the word-to-word description of what TVPG is. This program contains material that parents may find unsuitable for younger children. Again, I'm going back to the 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock time slot. And you know what? If there is anything questionable, save it for 9 to 11. Make 8 to 9 family friendly. And then from 9 to 11, if there's anything edgy or anything that you want to do that might be a little bit of controversial, do it later in the show. But again, contains material that parents may find unsuitable for younger children. We're not even talking about children here. We're talking about younger children. So in my book, you're a teenager at 13. In my book, younger children has to be 10 and before. So we're talking about parents may find this unsuitable for kids 10 and under. Is wrestling really designed for kids 10 and under? The whole premise of wrestling are two guys or two girls are fighting each other. It's based on combat. It's based on violence. Anytime there's physicality, it's based on violence. So does the nature of the show open it up to be suitable for kids under 10 years anyway? That's where you got to ask yourself. I'm going to go on. The theme itself may call for parental guidance. And yes, wrestling does call for parental guidance, and or the program may contain. The program may contain. What that basically says is the program is allowed to contain this. If it may contain, that means it may have. That means a TVPG program is allowed to have this. Are you ready? One or more of the following. Some suggestive dialogue. Could be sexual innuendo, infrequent coarse language. So we're allowed to have coarse language as long as it's not in every single segment and it's infrequent. So right here, we're allowed suggestive dialogue. We're allowed infrequent coarse language. We're allowed some sexual situations, and we're allowed moderate violence. All those are allowed in a TVPG show. Let me read this to you again. I'm going to go straight through it. This program contains material that parents may find unsuitable for younger children. The theme itself may call for parental guidance, and or the program may contain one or more of the following: some suggestive dialogue, infrequent coarse language, some sexual situations, and moderate violence. In other words, the WWE is nowhere near the TVPG line. Nowhere near the line. Why? Because it's TVPC. They are trying to be politically correct. They are a public company now with a board of directors and a lot of people they have to answer to. The problem is, how many shows are politically correct on television from 8 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock at night? And let me go further, because it's usually over at about 11:10, 11:15. What shows on television are politically correct from 9 p.m. till 11:15? Go through your television dial during that time and see what's on. It's not Family Hour. And the TVPG rating is telling you it doesn't have to be Family Hour. On a TVPG show, you are allowed suggestive dialogue, infrequent coarse language, some sexual situations, and moderate violence. You're allowed all those things. The WWE is not even TVPG, so don't blame it on that rating. They're not even TVPG, and that's on them. They're given a rating of all these things that they were allowed to do, the same exact things we did in the Attitude Era, and they choose not to do them because in 2015, they're politically correct and people aren't watching. When it comes to television viewing and when it comes to wanting to be entertained, adults are not looking for politically correctiveness. Do adults go see G movies? Do adults go see PG movies, for that matter? 80% of the movies adults go see are rated R with adult content. That's what they go to see. They're not politically correct. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse. They're not even TVPG. They are TVPC. There was nothing on that show. Go watch it. I know you have the WWE Network. Go watch March 30th, 1998. See how the rating is TVPG. In other words, there is nothing on that show that you could not put on the show today. Nothing. The WWE chooses not to do that. And, if you choose to continue to watch that kind of a show, that's the program itself, the theme itself causes for parental guidance. If you're not interested in that type of a show and you want a politically correct show, then you're watching the right show. If you're like me and you like some edge and you like suggestive dialogue and frequent coarse language, sexual situations, and moderate violence, then you're watching the wrong show, because they're not going there. So let's stop blaming it on the TVPG rating. They're not even there. They're not even close to it. So I hope now you understand what they're allowed to do and what they're choosing to do. Two completely different things. So there you have it. Amen. Hallelujah. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope now I just gave you a little bit more of things they can do. that can approve the show immediately. The structuring of the show, the hooks, the cliffhangers, cut down standalone segments with standalone stories that will keep the attention of the viewer, and then do TVPG. Let's do TVPG and see how that goes. And let me tell you something. It's not the USA Network that wants to be politically correct. I could tell you that right now. Look at some of the other shows on the USA Network that are on at night, that are on 9 to 11 o'clock at night. It's not the USA Network that wants to be PC. They don't want to be politically correct. I'm sure they want to be TVPG, and they're not getting that. So I would think sooner or later, USA Network is going to want to push that line. They don't care about stockholders. They don't care about the WWE Network. USA Network doesn't answer to anybody but their viewers. And if their viewers don't want to see a product that's politically correct, which is exactly what yesterday's ratings told them, we don't want to see this product, USA Network is not going to give a crap about WWE shareholders. They want numbers. They want people watching the show. That's what they're paying for. So they're going to want a product sooner or later that's a little bit more edgy, because that's what people want to see. So we'll see what happens when we get to that point. But listen, everybody, again, I thank you for this opportunity. I enjoy coming on here, Wrestling Inc., and working with the guys that I do. As I said, join us Monday for the Raw review. Outside of that, you could see me all week long, VinceRussoBrand.com. I'm running a special now, less than $1 a week. You could become a member. But most important, man, have a great day tomorrow. Have a great Thanksgiving. Spend time with your families. Embrace, kiss, hug. Tell those you love them. That's the most important thing, because what's here today is gone tomorrow. And a lot of times we take things for granted in our life. Let tomorrow be a day about giving, loving, hugging, squeezing, kissing. Yes, I just ripped off Journey, but let tomorrow be all about family. I love you guys. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.